Welcome to the Success Over Struggle podcast. I'm Tisha Marie Pelletier, your host, where we interview entrepreneurs, organizational leaders, and nonprofit leaders to learn how they achieved their success over struggle. Now, on with the show. Hi, it's Tisha, your host of the Success Over Struggle podcast, along with my good friend and co-host, Ryan Parker.
How you doing, Tisha?
I am perfect. How about you?
Doing awesome. Doing awesome. And we have the pleasure of having Rene Johnson. She is the founder and CEO of Power Zone Coaching. She is also the co-founder of Sheroes United, an international nonprofit that has helped 1,000 plus domestic violence victims. And she's also an author. You're like woman of all trades here, Rene. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks, Tisha. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good. All right. So this podcast is really about the success over struggle. So all of those things where you're like, I had to go through this, and this is what grew me, and this is how I got back up and how I got back in that fight. So we love hearing these stories, not so much about, hey, talk to us all about your success, but what did you have to go through? Like, what are those defining moments in your life where you're like, I've got this? Is there some story that is like, you know what, this is the one for me?
I have actually several.
As we most do.
Yeah. Usually when you're trying to go for big successes, you're going to go through lots of different struggles, whether you like it or not, right? So I often talk about one of my formidable ones that was really life-defining, which is being a survivor of domestic violence. Actually, the worst case the DA said he's ever seen. I'm lucky to be alive. And I've shared that often, but I thought one of the key things to maybe expand on that for your listeners is to share about when you go through those major struggles and you have sometimes triumph. In this case, it wasn't. It's a matter of really getting your mindset around that's not it. Mm-hmm. The story goes, without going into all the details of the domestic violence one, is when I finally was able to break free, I end up in having to move under the protection of the police and whatnot to like half a state away. And when I did that, I had to choose to leave everything behind, everything. And that meant no place to live, mm-hmm. no friends, no family, no job. And strike out on figuring out a new life for myself, which we obviously eventually did. But in that process, that just requires so much strength mm-hmm. and so much trust of yourself in the big moments and the little moments. And one of the things I was going to share today is even when we're trying to overcome these struggles, counting those little wins is so important. I recall getting to go to the dollar store. Now, why is the dollar store a struggle?
I love the dollar store.
We didn't have anything. I had to sell my minivan mm-hmm. at the time to be able to fund anything I was trying to do and getting back on my feet and handling the grueling legal process I had to go through. And I recall having to look through my purse and having literally just the change and maybe a few dollar bills mm-hmm. in there. And this is after I did everything I possibly could to actually move beyond this horrible experience and have the courage and strength, which it takes a lot, and go to a new place. And now I'm faced with, to me, was one of the biggest struggles. I have to feed my kids. Mm-hmm. I have no one to go to. I remember going to the dollar store and figuring out that you can actually get a box of pasta, a can of sauce, some corn, and you got a meal. Mm-hmm. Get a couple tortillas, a can of refried beans, and you got a breakfast. And somehow through that and many other struggles I had to go through to get to today, because it continued testing me, mm-hmm. There is faith that is built in each one of these that we can't always see in the moment. And so that struggling is, now I can see it as growing. Mm-hmm. I believe that greatness doesn't come, just all of a sudden, poof, it's here.
Nope.
It's through every push and pull that we trust ourselves and step in. And going from life and death situation to the everyday how to feed your kids to dealing with legal process, one thing after the other, and it just seemed like it was snowballing, and I had to make some decisions on how I was going to take my power back. And that is the success part, which brought me here to today.
Oh, I want to hear this. Ryan?
So I have a question for you, Rene.
Okay.
So most entrepreneurs and most people in their life, when adversity hits, they don't look at it as an opportunity to grow. They look at it as a problem that's going to take them down.
Yes.
And my dad always taught me, he said, look, it's not how hard they hit you. It's not how hard you hit the mat. What determines your resolve is how long are you going to lay on that mat before you get back up, coming swinging. When you look at the struggles that you've been through, and you are looking at someone else and you're trying to explain to them, hey, look, you're going to go through these struggles, but here's how you need to look at them to grow. What would you say to somebody?
Well, for twofold, I love your dad's advice. That's 100%. That's why I could go into all the details of the domestic violence, which I've done on different podcasts. But I wanted to share the simplicity of even that one story because you're so right. It isn't necessarily the size, it's how you're going to pick yourself back up. So what I would say to somebody is give them a new perspective of the situation. So I can answer that through a story. That's just kind of how I prefer. Is that okay? Yeah. So in my case, we weren't able to prosecute with all the effort. Somebody forgot to sign a document, and we missed the statute of limitations by 180 days for 4 felony charges. Why is that related to your question, Ryan? Is that in that moment, I remember falling to my knees and saying, are you kidding me? Enough's enough. I mean, begging, pleading, thinking, okay, who would care if I check out? Seriously. And I had to make a decision. I can give up, or I can look for another opportunity of how to see this differently. And you know what I did? I put myself back online, Lincoln Law School. I studied my butt off. I figured out how to feed my kids. Dollar store became my best friend. I worked 3 jobs. I talked to different people that I could find in the community and resources. The DA had me. And pretty soon, I was there in the courtroom with my ex and his high-powered attorney and myself. And I was now faced with trying to get not what the DA was going to get, but now the protective, hardest order to protect my children. And I had worked grueling hours. Okay, so adversity, yes, but hard work and determination is so important in this. And I could not, afford these attorneys anymore with the 3 jobs. And I sat there like a mama bear in front of the judge, okay, with him. And I told my story. And I told it from my heart. And you know what happened? I got to tell you this one part, is that I won. I won what no attorney could actually do. And I recall getting up from that and trying to walk out of the courtroom, and a gentleman ran up to me and said, what law firm do you work for? And I said, I don't, but it feels good to be, mistaken. And so the advice I would give is if that's what you see, that's what you're going to believe. Okay?
I think it's amazing you say that, Rene, because that's one of the things that most people have trouble with is personal acceptance of the situation and then personal accountability of the situation. And instead of projecting that this is happening to them from someone else, they can take the ownership of it and say, no more. I'm drawing the line in the sand. I'm going to better myself in this situation. So number one, I can overcome the situation and it will never happen to me again.
Absolutely. But I think it's not about, I will say one thing, not about never happen to me again. It will be, I'll never be in that situation, allow my power to be taken away. Because there are going to be things that come up, right?
Yeah, but you'll see the signs so you know that it's around the corner. So maybe you can say for the next time,
hindsight,
I'm going to be able to navigate this differently than I did the previous time.
I would agree. Absolutely. And that's one thing that I tried to teach my clients, and even just people that come to me for advice. that requires a huge trust of yourself. And that's not always easy to do, as confident as you may be, that trust, but learning how to actually take yourself out of the situation, because we are so full of emotions and we're right? So learning how to separate yourself from it so that you can see a different perspective is a new behavior to learn that I think is going to help you with this.
And it's interesting because we had RK Springfield on a previous podcast episode, and RK equates it to, and we were talking about the chameleon complex, where sometimes we don't want to admit that we have faults or we have issues that we need to work on. So we put up a facade of who we are. And a lot of times when we go through those struggles, the easiest thing to do is put on that facade, because it then takes the projection off of ourselves of the things we need to do. And it becomes our red badge of courage of, oh, I had to deal with this. And you can carry that boulder with you forever. And it gives you all the excuses in the world not to do things.
I call it a mask of confidence. Okay.
I love that.
Confidence.
I talk about that in my book, and that's exactly what it is. It's a protective barrier, right? So we don't have to face that. We can pretend that everything's okay. We got this. And on the outside, it can appear that way. And on the inside, we're like, oh, holy, somebody please rescue me. We're treading water, right?
I need that SOS right now.
Yeah.
That's usually when I go grab myself a big glass of whiskey and then I try to think through like decisions I've made.
Yes.
Very true.
I'm just kidding.
So what would you say to someone, you said that you were talking with a lot of clients or even just women in general who feel like they've lost that confidence. They don't know what their worth is anymore. And, you want to turn that around for them. So what would be those words of wisdom that you would instill in them?
That warms my heart, Tisha, because it doesn't matter what their title is. That happens a lot. I was actually speaking to a client this morning, and on the outside, all intensive purpose, confident. But then I saw the tears well up in her eyes, and I saw that deep, heavy breath, and she's trying to pat it like, okay, well, we're done. I said, no, what's that? What's that? And that is that powerful side of yourself, that higher self that knows your truth. And the more you suppress it, the harder it is for you to hear it. And one thing I would do is to teach them how to listen to that higher wisdom in themselves that often gets lost when they're going through struggles, or they have so many responsibilities, or the dreams didn't happen the way they want. And that's a huge part of finding your confidence. You can't be confident without trusting yourself.
Exactly.
I agree with that, Renee. How do you talk to a client and get them to understand that their confidence isn't where it could be? And then what's that start of that journey to find the confidence? What's that look like? How do you get them kind of springboarded and say, okay, you got this. We can take this journey together and we're going to get this going. What's that first step they have to take?
The first step I recommend is getting in touch with that higher wisdom, higher self, even if they like, oh yeah, that's just coachy words, right?
Just coachy words.
I'm like, no, watch me. We're going to show you something that I teach, again, from senators to individuals. And that is starting with your intentions. And what we create, so what I will have them do is create what's called a power zone affirmation. And what I'm doing with that is getting them to put out there these thoughts and words from the intentions that maybe they can't even see for themselves yet. Maybe me as the coach is holding that higher agenda, and we're like, okay, we'll pretend, right? So if you were, what we do first is I help them identify reversely their power leaks. So that's actually, it's easier for people to identify all this crap.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll start there and figure out what are your top 5 power leaks. And these can come in all kinds of crazy hidden forms they wouldn't even recognize till we pull it out. Then reversely, now designing it into your power zone, into actually what is that like different if you were to do it, in your power zone. Well, what do you mean? Well, tell me an example. Have you ever had an experience where it was easy, it was smooth, you were excited, and maybe they can't think of one since they were in high school. I don't know. but everybody some point has that, and getting them to resonate. Now, okay, look at that. That's what it looks like at its current state. We have to honor it, because if we pretend it doesn't, it's only going to get bigger and scream for more attention. So we got to shift the power. We shift it into changing the language Because what happens then internally, they start to practice using this on a daily basis and often several times a day. So they can feel that higher truth calling at them. And you know what happens? Often they tell me, I didn't realize I was so complacent. Shh, don't tell anybody. I didn't realize I had all this issues. But what they see on the other side is they're still capable. That they're starting to see that part of them show up in any part of their life, not just one. And that's when they can truly take that mask of confidence off, because they're starting to believe in themselves again. So it's a matter of reprogramming from the inside out and building that confidence through seeing themselves show up in that higher level. Does that make sense, Ryan?
Oh, absolutely.
So I have a follow-up question to that. When you work with a client, are you taking them from where they were and moving them from that point? Or are you taking them from where they are today and moving them from that point?
Well, that's a mixed bag of tricks. Because it is in their perspective where they are today, but as we talk through it, we're bringing a lot of stuff in our backpack with us. So there's a combination, right? But coaching's different than, I say, a therapist or counselor. Though we do deal with some of the issues of the past, it's like this example I give my clients. There's a beautiful meadow in front of you, beautiful trees, but there's a white picket fence in front of it. And you want to get in that meadow and into those trees. So do we stand here? And there's a big lock. I forgot that. There's a lock on the fence, and you have to unlock that to get over, to get over there in the perception in its current state, which a lot of people turn around and go home. Okay. And so we're not, instead of sitting there looking at the lock and ascertaining, okay, when did that get there? How long has it been there? What does it feel like to you? We go, okay, there's a lock there. So our other options are either around, over, under. How do you want to get there? Let's rock and roll. And so we start to propel them. And as they're being propelled, they're also being challenged with letting go. Because in order to bring the new, they're going to have to let some of those rocks in their backpack out in order to get over that fence, right? So does that kind of help? It's more about a forward movement as they're learning and growing and releasing the old.
It's interesting because I find that most entrepreneurs or most folks that might be working a regular job and they're like, I want to go do this for myself, they're afraid to let those rocks go because then they have to be accountable and look in the mirror for themselves. And most of the time, I find that the average person doesn't want to see what's there. They would rather, definitely, like you said, have that that mask on. And it's interesting that you have to dig back into that past to move forward and address those things. I've done that in my own life where I've taken those red badges of courage and I've used them so it makes me feel comfortable in where I'm at. And it's a very tough thing to be reflective and indifferent to your own issues to really see, I guess I really do need to work on myself.
That's interesting you say that, and I totally agree with you. That's typically why people stay in what I call your comfort zone. As even though it may feel comfortable, it's the hardest place to be. It's the hardest place. Think about it. So what's harder? Keeping those lies alive, having that persona, knowing in your secret time, saying, I'm not happy, and trying to, all those different things. Or is it easier actually to finally say, okay, let's pick one of these and let me just own my truth and finally get over it and have the benefit of that. So that's part of my job, is to have that dialogue with them so we can get rid of that fear, that energy, because that's what the comfort zone is. If you want to narrow it in, it is absolutely your fears.
Fear.
Yeah, good point, Ryan.
So how do you, success is defined by so many different things for people. And I love asking that question of, how is it that you define success for yourself? When do you know that I've hit it? I've hit the success.
My answer will be twofold.
Okay.
I believe it's a journey to success. So do I arrive? No. It's an evolution and evolving. And if I have, I will be lucky and continue to hopefully be lucky that I find many comfort zones in my life and then move into many different levels of my power zone. And that's how I define success, is being able to work more and more from my personal power zone. The power zone is, the end result is where we are deliberate. It's hard to be deliberate if you're carrying those rocks, if you have that mask on, all these different things we've talked about, right? That deliberateness is needed in building an empire, an entrepreneur for yourself, right? To be able to do that. And so it's deliberately creating your life. So getting out of the passenger seat and the driver's seat. And you can feel the difference between if you've got your leg over on the other side, lipstick on your face sideways and whatever, or if you've got your hands steady on the wheel. It is also claiming your power. And you can feel that as well. And then it's making a difference with those you influence and lead. And when I'm in my power zone, people say that I inspire them. So to me, that's one of my core values, is to be able to do that, right?
How much do you find intentionality and the stripping away of the excess is important in finding that purpose-driven life? Because I find a lot of times people have excess in their life, and instead of stripping it down to the bare minimum, say, this is what it is, they try to live in that excess, and it stops them from their intentionality and their ultimate goal of attaining that success and that legacy that they've wanted.
Great question, you two. Yes. In fact, when people say that their plate feels heavy, like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, I'm so heavy, that's because they have all that excess on it. Okay. That's what's making up and making your comfort zone even greater. Okay. So one of the things, well, not one, there are 3 key elements real quick here on the power zone that's going to answer that. Number 1, you need to understand your core values. While many things may be important, not everyone's your core driving, motivating energy. So letting go. There you go. Have to let go. Another one is you need to identify your true strengths, not your goods. Everybody has goods. And that's another thing. And in being a successful entrepreneur, you work with Tisha, is that they've got to let go of those goods and really strongly claim the great. So that's letting go.
Oh, that's good.
And then the third one is to truly claim your why. That is probably the hardest thing for people to do. It takes them a while to really, they may have surface things that, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And when you keep asking the right questions and drill them down, it's not their why. It takes a few times to get there. But when they get there, the brilliancy of that vision of what that is starts to peel away naturally. It's like melts away the obstacles for the other.
I have a question for you on Rene on that is, I've read Simon Sinek's Start With Why and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's become very popular, but I'm finding that a lot of people are watering down their why because they don't dig deep enough, like you said. So the why ends up being more, maybe not their authentic why, but the why of, hey, this is what other people want me to be. And their why is not truly theirs. When you keep digging in, and I know it's the question of, well, tell me more, right? And you're trying to dig in. Where do you see that the breakthrough of a true why comes from when you're working with a client to get there? What do they have to do? Or what's that inflection point where they finally go, that's not the why I'm doing it for other people. It's the why I'm doing it for me. Where do you typically see that breaking point take place?
About 3 or 4 questions in. but seriously, it's when we relieve them of the burden of the tactical. It's not the tactical mechanical things. That's not your why. That's the how, okay, right, or the processes. It's not the messages of what, somebody in your past as a child said that's what you're going to do or be. So we got to get rid of those beliefs, those myths is what I call them. And then about the third one is, that long lost dream that they had. And that's kind of there. But then when we get down into the why. So the fulfilling part of us comes from a deeper place that knows its truth. And when they get there, it's like this feeling of belonging to themselves. That's the difference. It doesn't have any other markers tied to it. It's a feeling of freedom, of truly belonging to themselves. When was that tipping point for you with your why? Because you've had, I'm sure, struggles. Obviously, you've had some personal struggles. Then I'm sure starting a nonprofit and being a successful businesswoman, you've probably had other struggles there. What was the point at which you were like, this is my why, and this is how I'm going to own it? I love that you get to ask that. So they say that, what's that quote? That they say there's 2 days, important in your life, the day you're born and the day you find out why. I had that experience, Ryan. It was let me think back. It was 2015. It was August of 2015. I know I've done all these things prior to that, right? But I've been working through that journey. And here I am. I'm keynote speaker for our Cheryl's movement, and we were part of the 1 Billion Rising. And this is like happens over 260 countries in one 24-hour period, and we were hosting in Salt Lake and so forth and so forth. So I'm up there, and I'm in this pavilion area, and they had this like waterfall, huge rock area that we were speaking in. And for whatever reason, I felt like getting on the rock. Okay. So I'm up there and I'm going to tell my Power Zone story, as I call it, right? And the transformations that I've had to go through. And I remember looking out and there was media there and I had not ever talked about it publicly yet. I mean, I wrote in my book and smaller events, right? But this is a huge forum. People are recording this and thousands of people here and so forth. And I have a picture of this, actually, I keep of it. And there I am on the rock. And the script that I had in my phone to talk and share went away. And I'm standing there and I'm having this epiphany. I'm here to serve. This story, this horrible story of having my face busted in, my kids hurt, all these things, stabbed, and I can go on these different things. This is why. I'm here today to make a difference with mankind. And by me sharing my voice, my values, by me rising up and leading these changes, this is my why. I'm not supposed to be afraid of that anymore. I'm not supposed to hold that back. I'm to tell my truth. And as I spoke to the audience, I could see in their faces, strangers, that the truth that I'm sharing and the courage that I was exhibiting and the challenge to break those chains for themselves, those chains that hold us back. If I can do this, what can you do? And challenge them to become Cheryls in their own life. That was my why. And I feel that even though now I'm more in the advisory part of it, because I served like 6-7 years in the really, really active role, it's still my biggest and greatest calling I've ever had, to have that voice.
How do you describe the feeling in your life when you finally found your why? If you had to describe it in one word.
One word.
Oh, you're asking a lot.
One word. I want to know the one word that you would say when you reached your why. What was it?
Home.
Oh.
Coming home. And that's when we talked about earlier. I got a chance to experience a little bit more of that this year. I had to go through another struggle, and I got to have another crossover to another layer of wisdom in my power zone, and I got to feel again the strength of belonging to myself. And I hope that everyone has a chance to do that in their life. And you know how many people won't? They'll just tiptoe it out, but that is what it is. That's what it is. It's that place of purpose, that place of absolutely trust and feeling safe with yourself, regardless of anybody else's freaking opinion, right?
Exactly.
Do you feel like you reside in your own sanctuary when you get to that point?
Yes. And I had to tell you, from a person that's lived a lot of survival, I don't know about you, Tisha, it was kind of weird to be in there. You have to get comfortable with it. You have to okay, wait a minute. How come I'm not feeling the struggle? What is this? You're so used to living. But when you get there, I remember hearing a quote once that the habits, behaviors, thoughts, whatever practices that helped you survive no longer serve you when you get there, right? And that's really what it is. You get to choose then, and then that becomes another struggle to learn how to choose.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Good. So what is next for you? You have so many things going on. I know you're sitting on the Success Over Struggle live panel at Social Connect July 30th.
Can't wait.
Yes, I'm excited for this. But you have a new book coming out. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with Rene.
Oh, lots of projects. That's a loaded question. So for me, yes, I have my first book, Leaving Your Comfort Zone, and I'm working on finishing up Leadership Why. And I'm digging a lot deeper into the power of leadership, the power of getting to that place, that place of belonging and being a leader in your life. So it's been a journey for me, and it's been good. And I'm just listening to inspiration as I do it and finding the right, like I did for my first book. So it's taken a little longer, but I know that it's going to have the right message because of that. The other thing I'm doing is I'm so excited. I have, spoken at many events, have contributed to many events. and so forth. A lot of private workshops for my clients and retreats. But I'm going to have my first ever Power Zone Mastery live event here in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area when it cools off in the fall.
Perfect weather, fall.
Yeah. So, and this is going to hopefully be kind of a launch for my book too, and helping to get some things going on it. But it's really going to be a deeper transformation experience for today's leaders. And my team and I are working on the details of it right now and getting ready to hopefully announce later this summer.
Very good. Good. And who is it that you work with through Power Zone? Like, who are those? These are the perfect clients. These are the people that I really love to come in and transform their lives.
So it will be, my perfect clients are executive level. So they're usually more in the decision-making levels and above. So they can make a difference in their organization. And small to mid-sized business owners. And it doesn't matter the industry, because what we're focusing on is helping them find their true leadership again. And often, just an example the other day, doing a consult with a prospective client. And we got through all the technical things, mechanical things, and this and this, time management, this and this, my team, this and this. And we finally got down to, I don't feel like I'm contributing anymore in my leadership, like I'm making a difference. Mm-hmm. And those symptoms of it is all those other things, the outside things. And so when they're ready and we have that dialogue, I can help them understand the influence they still have available to them in their leadership. And then that can then go into helping them move their bigger visions forward, whether they're in an executive role in an organization wanting to create positive change and really create an empowerment in their team and their organization, or in their business. And the byproduct of that every time is that they become obviously better leaders, but they also end up having more profit. More profit in their business, but also in their life. The joy fulfillment. For me, profit is not just numbers. That's going to be a byproduct. That's going to happen when you use the Power Zone process. But the joy factor that they had lost, and they now can feel like either my career, all this hard work, or my business can now become that vehicle for me. So executives that are, I kind of know what I'm doing, but I'm not doing it. And I know accountability sucks, but I really need accountability and I really am ready for change and don't know exactly how. But so that part, or business owners that know they have this greater vision, but they're stuck. So it's that feeling of helping them get unstuck, get fired up, and get moving. Does that help you?
Absolutely. I think it's a lot about uncovering that in you. Mm-hmm. I know you were just on a podcast with, you were saying Tom Shea, right? Mm-hmm. And you were talking about being deliberate and knowing that this is not going to be an overnight success story, that it's going to take some time. It's going to be, you need to focus on these things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. It's not a race, and it's not an overnight process. Change is going to help you transform. I know not everybody likes that word change. Even Tom talked about it, but I see change as the catalyst for transformation. Mm-hmm. And so there are going to be parts of the transformation that you're more ready for change, and then parts you're going to fight. And if we are a trusted partnership, you're going to trust me to call that out in a loving, kind way, but hold that for you to help you find the courage finally to move through, because that's the only way you're going to get to what you want the other side. So deliberateness is, okay, no excuses. Mm-hmm. Holds bar, I'm not going to hold myself back. I'm truly going to commit. And that's a discipline that if you're going to be successful in your career or in your business, the kind of success where you can have the joy factor, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to learn to be deliberate. And that's releasing some of these rocks that we talked about earlier, Ryan. Excuses, the beliefs, the fears, all of that. So deliberateness is absolutely a component of being successful. Mm-hmm.
Good. Anything else, Ryan, you want to add?
I'm trying to digest it all.
You're so amazing, Rene.
Thank you. Ryan, you had great questions too. I was impressed.
I've done this a couple times.
Had to give him a bad time.
He's a pro. So how can listeners find out more about you, about your retreat coming up, your upcoming book?
Wonderful. So I've made it central on my website. So if you go to Power Zone Coach, not coaching, powerzonecoach.com, You can see all my social media links are there. The platforms are there. I have a resource page with tons of complimentary things, that you can take advantage of and kind of explore different assessments you can do, articles, podcasts. I'll definitely put this one up there when it's available, along with Tom's when I get that. But that's the best place. And I want to tell the listeners that I truly believe in building partnerships. If you can't tell while Ryan's digesting over there, I'm going to be there for you, and I'm going to expect to, right? But that's a good thing. And so if you reach out to me in whatever format, I will respond. Even if my team is, checking that contact form email, I am a person that is going to respond. So don't be shy. Ask me questions.
And I should share, that's how you and I actually met, was through a LinkedIn connection, through other people LinkedIn requesting us.
That's right.
And we're big into, again, taking that online, offline, and getting connected. And so we had lunch probably like several months ago and just were like instant friends.
Yeah. You walk your talk. How's that?
Yes.
I loved it.
Yes, you too. So I admire that about people who are like, I'm going to do what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a lot of that breed around here.
Yeah. No, not really. Well, thank you so much, Rene. It was a pleasure having you here at Success Over Struggle podcast. Ryan?
Thank you, Rene. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Ryan and Tisha. I appreciate it. This has been a great experience.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Success Over Struggle podcast. We hope we've inspired you to overcome your struggles and find your own success. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.